we go. Yep.
Oh, they ran outside into a wall of archers. That's nice.
That's what you get, sons of bitches.
Okay, so there's an 8-second cooldown on feedings.
Only 8 seconds? That's not too bad.
Oh, that's Brandon that came in. I'm like, somebody else came in. That's Brandon.
It's me, I'm here.
Those guys were helping us out.
BPB!
We were over here murdering them.
Oh,
Yeah,
my
you still
bad.
made it, BPB. Hey, good evening. How are you? Welcome to the stream, Bipolar. Yeah, we've got probably about 25 minutes left of the stream for tonight. Been having fun, enjoying some vampire goofing.
Died.
You died? Oh, man.
I'm just gonna kill myself.
Kobe just straight up be dying.
It's just so far away, though.
That's
Oh, there's a way gate. Almost.
Been a lot of shit going on, but I just had a good call with your sponsor. You did? Okay, great. That's great. Well, if the offer's open to pop into stream and chat about it, or you can talk just there in the chat and type it out, and I'll read it and respond as appropriate. Up to you. Up to you. Or not. Or you can just tell me how your day was, or you can watch. You can. Yeah, shit. Why not? Okay. Do you have the you have all the information? Yeah, of course you have all the information for it. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Pop into the stream and. And I'll pause my game, and we can chat. Won't that be nice? Yes, it will be. And where's my workbench? Over here.
Am I connected?
Yeah, you are. Hey, how's it going?
Hey, man. Good
BPB.
to like meet you kind of.
Yeah, well, I would say that this qualifies. Now we can have voices to online names. Delightful.
Perfect.
How's it going?
It's it's been a hell of a time, man.
Okay.
It's been I don't know, just having to really deal with stressful shit, but still try and consciously improve my life is still it's still new.
Sure.
Even if it's been a little while, it's very challenging.
Yeah, you find all of your kind of ways of dealing with stress that you had before, either dealing with it directly or kicking it down the can by indulging in substance. You find all of those things have to be rewritten, refounded. You have to find some new axiomatic place to ground most of your decision making on how you deal with this kind of stuff. It's hard. It's really, really hard. Do you mind if I ask how far into your recovery you are?
Yeah, no worries, dude. I've been sober since August 1st, 2021.
2021. Okay.
But,
So I thought that it was a couple of years.
Yeah, it's coming up on 2 years now, but frankly, something I've kind of realized for myself, especially recently, is that I was sober technically. I was incredibly miserable though, because I had no foundation to stay sober, and every day I was getting closer and closer to relapse. And
Gotcha.
I don't know, I came paper thin recently to just a really bad relapse, and for whatever reason I mean personally, because I'm trying my best with the program now. I'm trying to see it as my higher power, but it was, man, I mean, shit's always hitting the fan in my life right now, but yeah. I haven't come that close for quite a while, so that I don't know, I think I felt that desperation of oh shit, I'm gonna die,
Oh wow. It's hard when you get to a place where you start to see your own mortality kind of laid out right in front of you, but for a momentary lapse, you could go over the edge pretty easily. Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah, I mean, Oh, sorry to cut you off there.
No, it's fine.
Oh.
You've got the floor. You're more than welcome to. I'm just trying to relay, whatever similar experiences that I can, so that have
Yeah.
somebody that you feel has some kind of grounding in where you're at, even if it's not, maybe 100% lined up perfectly. But yeah, I dealt with suicidal ideation the last night that I drank right before I came out. I had a plan and was about to go through with it, and the only reason I didn't was because I knew it would have been my at the time 11-year-old son that would have found my body. So yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So I get it. I get it.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I mean, for me, relating is actually, it's very crucial, especially right now. I find that it can be like one of the most powerful things. Um, it's something that's, I think, interesting for me. And so it's, by the way, it's okay to talk about the suicidal stuff and on stream. That's all right.
I haven't gotten any warnings or anything about that.
Okay.
If you want to call it Robloxing, which is what I've heard other streamers refer to it as. But until I'm told
Sure.
that I'm flagged for something, like
Okay.
I feel that's so regressive. Like if I'm talking to you about the place that I was, and I'm
Right.
being frank
Right.
about the fact that I felt this way, but that I'm, now past it, and I'm trying to empathize with somebody else that, maybe has felt that type of way about something. That feels like so just absolutely regressive for somebody to be like, you guys are terms of servicing. It's like,
completely
no, we're
agree.
fucking like talking through our trauma in as healthy a way as we can,
Right.
on a service that I swear to God, next door is a hot tub streamer, and on the other side of me is somebody playing fucking Mario. Like,
That's amazing.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, just to try, I don't want to have any potential of like damaging the channel, so I'm gonna refer to it as Robloxing.
Okay, that sounds good.
But yeah, something that I think is a newer, unique challenge that I'm facing right now, as opposed to where I've been prior, is that I have to I have to actively care about having those feelings, because I was in the psych ward, I was in treatment centers, I was, I met my partner that I have now through a teen a teen treatment center. We were both there because we tried to Roblox,
Wow.
and yeah, I've tried a couple times, and what's frustrating is that I didn't worry. I wasn't concerned about. I didn't have to worry about caring about it because I was done. I felt very done,
Yeah.
But now I have to, like. It's really in my face, the consequences of a relapse, the consequences of going down that path, and it's sometimes I feel resentful at that, but more often than not recently I felt grateful. But that's hard. It's hard to like have to care about it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
to try
Feeling
and
your feelings is rough.
yeah, feeling your feelings sucks sometimes.
It can suck
I
sometimes.
mean, it's incredibly important, but sometimes, man, that addict part of me is like, the last thing I want to do right now is live in reality. And,
Yeah.
But I have found, like, I just know, for me, I don't know if I'll have another run. I mean, I could definitely have another run in me if I relapse to get sober, but just on where it's been, the chances of that, I know, will get at least considerably lower every time I were to relapse. And I have to, it's hard, but I have to really be on my ass about it.
Can I ask you, is that coming from a place of knowing yourself, or is that coming from a place where you have an idea of you have an idea that relapse necessarily means that each subsequent attempt at getting sober is just that much harder? Is that focused on you, or is that focused on, external external information that you might be trying to draw from to look down the path that you've got ahead of you.
You know what? Thinking about it just now with you saying that, and kind of in a new way for me, actually, it's not how I typically would think about it, but I feel like it actually could just be another, like a sneaky, maybe not positive, but a sneaky form of my addiction.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think a big part of my addiction, my alcoholism, my drug addiction, whatever it is, really wants me to feel like it is completely hopeless if I go back to it, because that's what I was comfortable with, was that hopelessness.
Mm-hmm.
So it might not be the most rational.
Sure.
I don't think that way for other people, that you're just screwed, if you go back out. But I always do have this completely different standard for myself and for my own hope of having a positive relationship with myself. So I would, having heard you say that, I would argue that it probably is coming from that other place. Maybe not the most sober place.
Okay. I mean, I'm just asking to get a kind of a clearer understanding of where it is that where that's coming from. Like, I am constantly telling myself that one of the things that we need to do for other people in recovery is to recognize that relapses do happen. They happen in sobriety. That happens, but that each of us in recovery needs to be able to extend grace to anybody that is willing to say, I made a mistake. Day one starts now, and from there on, you count that as, okay, that's your day one. Let's go. LFG, let's fucking go.
Well, that's the thing too, right? Is like, I think a lot of us who are alcoholics have a very do or die, or like all in or all out, style of thinking, like all or nothing. That's what I mean.
Sure. Yeah. No, I totally empathize with that.
And I think it's interesting, and something I'm noticing for myself right now too. I mean, I've been sober for a decent amount of time, at least for me,
almost 2 full years now, coming up on.
It's kind of trippy, not gonna lie.
I think it's awesome.
It is awesome, but I have to consciously choose to see it that way too right now.
Sure.
Like, if for anyone else, like I said, I would be like, that's beautiful, that's great, but I think there is something to be said about the fear of getting better, or the fear of like that there's hope, because I don't know if it's like, a big thing for me that is always associated with my using is guilt, feelings of guilt and worthlessness, and
leading into or coming out of?
Both.
Okay.
Both. I feel like, I think more so like leaning into is more so the feeling of worthlessness, and then coming out of is guilt.
Okay.
Very intense, I think. Which
probably doubles back on that feeling of worthlessness.
Yeah. And so I and typically that would get me in a cycle. The last relapse I had was a 6-day binge of many substances that I could get my hands on, and that's when I ended up in the hospital again. And even at that moment, I think I saw the hope that could be through sobriety, even if I wasn't ready to understand it. Because I hope I'm not just rambling, by the way.
No, you're doing just fine. We're getting to know each other through this, and you're painting a pretty comprehensive picture right now, and I'm
cool.
really, really happy that you're sharing.
Well, I appreciate the space to share, by the way.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
When I was still like pretty much like coming down, but when I went into the emergency room after those like 6 days or whatever, there was this guy who was, I guess he was there to support his friend. I think his friend was there for like a drug test or something. I don't remember. But just this there's just this dude sitting across, and at one point I noticed like, oh, he's holding a big book because I'd already gone to meetings a couple times,
Sure.
at that point, and then he started talking to me, and he said like the reason he pulled his big book out is because he felt like he related to me for some reason. And we had this great conversation, and not even related, by the way, like to Alcoholics Anonymous. None of this story I even really think about to fully relate to Alcoholics Anonymous,
Hmm.
but it was something. I think it was like one of the first instances I felt connected and understood by someone who wasn't actively using.
Hmm.
And I still think about that day because it's what I've realized. It's like I've been sober for quite some time, and for like the past year I've done it. I've tried to just do it on my own, but I didn't realize how miserable I was, and where it was
It's
getting me.
yeah. It's so. I think this is one of the hardest things on earth to try to do, by white knuckling it, and
Yeah, absolutely.
I, every time, like, I don't want to be cynical about it, but anytime somebody's like, yeah, I tried to do it alone, I'm like, you tried to do it alone, and what happened?
Right.
Like, so as much as I don't want to be cynical, there is that, kind of thought in the back of my head. I think that regardless of anything else that goes on, if you are connecting to some kind of community, I think your chances of navigating your sobriety on a day-to-day basis is just going to be much so much better and so much more rewarding, because you're going to find connection with other people that's going to bring you
Exactly.
to a place where you feel just that little bit more whole about your place in the universe.
I completely agree. And it doesn't even, like, I mentioned AA because that's where that guy happened to be, but it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be AA at all. I still don't believe that it has to be this one thing, but I think some sort of community and some sort of fellowship and like understanding between sober people is so freaking crucial.
Mhm.
Like, because for me at least, the kind of alcoholic that I am, it's something I've come to realize is like I constantly want to isolate because I know the more I isolate, the more time I'll be spent alone with the person who's trying to kill me, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and the more I'm with other people, the more I see there's just so much more than the worst possible things my brain can tell myself about my life in the world. And it's hard to get used to that, I think.
Yeah.
It's definitely hard to get used to. Whether intentional or not, I do believe that, inherently the disease is. I still don't know about like the selfish. I mean, it is selfish, but it's at least self-centered. And even if you're not trying to be, an asshole, it's just that you're constantly trying to feel better in some way,
Hmm.
and it does relate to you. And I think that when you're around other people, you're helping. There's this really powerful thing about they're helping you for sure, but you're also helping them by being around them too. I mean, the power of relating to each other like that is something I haven't seen before in my life
Hmm.
until I started hanging around other sober people. So that's really what's been my rock recently, I think.
I think that's a pretty good rock, man. You hit on something there that, like I just had the sort of flash of, inspiration to what what I want to address that as. I think that there are passive and active things that happen when you are around and of service to other people. I think that passively, everybody that is in any kind of a group of fellowship or community or whatever you want to call it, I think that passively we all feed off of this sort of general vibe and understanding that each one of us shares certain experiences that with all of the rest of us. Now, those experiences might not match up 100%, but for the most part, I can tell you, like I sat down with somebody about a year ago that had a ketamine issue. And he like had lost jobs, he lost his marriage, like lost a whole bunch of shit, and he's basically like at the end of his rope. And he gives me a call and is like, "Hey, I know that you've been dealing with alcoholism. I know that you've been doing it out loud. Can we get together and like get lunch or something? And because I've got some stuff that I want to talk about." And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, 100%. When can we do this? Let's set it up. We go. We get lunch." He starts telling a story, and I have this look on my face. I'm like just kind of smiling. I'm just like sort of like nodding and smiling a little bit, like I know what's going on. And he's like, "Why are you smiling? Like I'm bearing my fucking soul to you." And I'm like, "Because your story sounds 90% like my story. It sounds almost exactly the same. And I'm going to tell you my story now. So you've told me yours, I'm going to tell you mine. And you're going to feel the exact same way that I feel right now." And I told him my story, and it did line up most of the way. Like there were a couple of different things that went on. Like I didn't lose my job and I didn't lose my marriage. I was lucky enough to, well, I don't know if it's lucky enough, but like my rock bottom wasn't so far down that I ended up doing super permanent damage to the relationships that I had or to my professional life. I'm lucky that way. Not everybody has that, but I'm lucky that way. And I am fully grateful for it. Like I totally understand the nature of that. So I never want anybody to think that I don't have that always in my head. But by the end of that day, he felt, okay, Will is navigating this with some semblance of hope on a day-to-day basis. Doesn't mean that he's not going to drink tomorrow, but he didn't drink today, and it looks like he's probably not going to for the rest of the day. That means that I can have a little bit of hope that for today I'm managing things, and hopefully tomorrow I'll be able to do it too. I'll take it like the cliche says, one day at a time. So that sense of relief, I think that's kind of a passive thing that we get from each other. And then there's the sort of explicit forms of help that we give to each other, like pieces of advice or giving each other tools for how to manage a craving or something like that. Those are much more easily written down. But I think that the powerful sort of almost aura-like nature of just being around other people that understand and can empathize with you in a way that nobody else can, I think is unbelievably powerful.
I completely agree. I mean, it's incredibly powerful, and something I was just thinking about while you were sharing that, and kind of what I was talking a little bit about with my sponsor is like we're so used to I think typically not one, but we're so used to a specific type of exchange. I feel horrible, instant, boom, okay, like just taking something, I'll feel better for a minute and then I'll crash hard, whatever, however it works for you as an alcoholic, you're an addict, but typically there's a pattern there, I think. And so, but there's something about that exchange between people and that aura that you were talking about, where I've noticed, it's not going to be like, sometimes I feel it really hits me, and sometimes it's a little more subtle, but I find that more often than not, that actually carries with me in a positive way. And that's something that it's almost like a little terrifying. Like I didn't quite get that from my using. The only time I really felt that was if I had a friend who we were both just constantly in that cycle of using, that's when I felt like we were relating. But if for someone like me, who I've always, like, looking back, even before I picked up the first drink or, first pill, first drug, whatever, even before I started really using, I never quite felt like I belonged anywhere or like I was understood. I felt very alone, and it was terrifying. And learning now that there is a way to feel not alone, but not need this incredibly damaging crutch.
Hmm.
It's very strange, you know? I mean, even like almost 2 years into it, I'm learning a lot of that. I feel like I've heard it before, I've kind of gotten it, but I'm really starting to learn it fully, or like really appreciate it more fully for the first time. And it's something that I know I need to hang on to. If I
So,
don't hang on to that, then I'll be convinced there's no good in sobriety right now, with where I'm at.
so one of the other things that I think is really important about that is I kind of feel like finding a community, finding that feeling is almost like finding a therapist in a lot of ways.
Mm,
You're looking for not necessarily super specific things, but you are looking for some general level of comfort with the people that you're going to be around, right? That's kind of the same thing as when I looked for a therapist, I interviewed a couple of different people, and then when I finally found one that I really liked, it really clicked. With those
yeah.
other people that I interviewed before, it didn't really click, and that was fine. It wasn't that big a deal. I had to give myself enough patience to know that this was going to be a process. This wasn't just going to be I'm going to try the very first therapist, and if it doesn't work out, then fuck therapy forever. I think that's a ridiculous position to take. I also think that, if you are having a hard time and this might not be directly for you, because it sounds like you're not dealing with this necessarily, but if you're having a difficult time finding a community that works, there are alternatives. There are there's other meetings, there's other systems of sobriety. If you're an atheist, there's secular AA. If you're if
Right.
you want something that's specific to a religious practice, there's that too. Like there are as many ways and as many different types of people in recovery as there are addicts. And I fully believe that.
I
Yeah.
I completely agree. Absolutely. Yeah.
So you kept saying it feels odd. When you think about that feeling, that do you feel positive about that? Is that a positive oddness? Like it's strange and alien, but also not something that you're interested in shying away from?
I think now more so than ever, yes. But for a long time, it kind of turned me off of sobriety, or like wanting to really maintain it,
Sure.
because the new, the new can be scary unless I know it's gonna screw me over.
Sure.
I typically don't mind, well, in the past, I haven't minded if something's uncertain, if it means that it's still going to affect me negatively, because it keeps me in my cycle of feeling, worthless. And it kind of feels like it's approval for me to do more um, self-destructive things. But this new kind of thing, being more positive.
Hmm.
For a long time, it kind of turned me off almost of everything, because it felt like I would have to actually consider saying goodbye to
Hmm.
the way that my life has been.
Hmm.
And that's all I've ever felt like I understood, you know?
Sure,
Um,
sure. I mean, it's self-destructive, but it's also something that you have grown comfortable with. And
right.
growing outside of that, any time, like, I don't think that you grow unless you're pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. And any kind of move outside of your comfort zone is necessarily going to be uncomfortable, which is never something that I think addicts are inherently good at. I think that's a learned skill. I think that takes time.
Right.
It took me forever to get to a place where I was comfortable pushing myself to be uncomfortable. And even to this day, I will find myself hitching before, coming up short right before I decide. Like, I'll decide on a course of action, and then I'll stop myself right before I embark on it, because what if this, what if the teachers don't like me, what if the other kids think I'm weird for picking my boogers and wiping them on little Sally's shirt, like, you know, what if it doesn't work out the way that I think it's going to? Usually, maybe I'm blessed, maybe I just, you know, am able to manifest it, maybe I persevere just enough until something positive happens, but for the most part, things tend to work out in at least a 51% positive favor. You know, I think that learning to be uncomfortable, especially when you know that, like, I think most people intellectually or academically know that there are better ways of doing things than the ways that addicts traditionally do, right? Like, we could probably sit down with most people, I'd say most people, not all people, but most people, and say, listen, is this lifestyle actually working for you? If you're honest, if you were to kill your ego right now and stop trying to protect yourself, is this lifestyle actually working for you? Most people, I think, would be like, no, I think I'm doing some really self-destructive stuff. It's like, yeah, so we can intellectualize and know that something is a better path, while our heart will still continue to drive us to do these kind of self-destructive things because it's in a place where it's comfortable, you know, harming itself. So yeah.
Well, no, absolutely. I mean, especially, you know, as alcoholics, like you said, we're not used to that because most of our goal, I feel like, for what we get used to being our goal, at least, has been to do everything we can to escape that feeling. I mean, shit, like, if I had put the amount of willpower into, I don't know, like school or doing something more positive for myself, than the amount of willpower I put into going to whatever length I had to go to get my next fix or my next drink, I mean, that's insane. Like, the amount that I could have accomplished technically, I don't really regret it because it's getting me to where I need to be now, you know? But, I mean, I always felt in kind of a funny way, I became the most, like, I could MacGyver whatever, you know, situation to get it to work out for me for using. But I just couldn't seem to apply that for sobriety for a really long time. Because it's that desperation. And I think something that's been hard for me too, you know, has been being in the program young. I've heard many people tell me that I'm very lucky, and I do agree. Like, there's definitely many reasons why I'm very lucky to be in the program young, but I think it also has its own unique challenges personally. I still feel like there's so much room to try in Roblox, or there's so much time that now I have in front of me to continue and build my resume of, you know, what I've done, drinking or using. I think, to be fair, that's true for any or like most addicts, alcoholics. Like, we always feel like we could have done more, or we want to do more. But it has been a really challenging thing for me, because I'm 19 now. My birthday's in November, so I'm coming closer to 20. But, like, you know, getting sober before you turn 18, that's really, for me, it's been really, really hard to have that willpower to stay, you know? And rationally, I can see, like, the 4 years or so that I was really going hard, you know, one of those years would have been too much. Like, and you don't need to compare it, but, like, I can still rationally see, like, yeah, I was sick enough, but I still want to feel sick enough. Or, like, I need to prove it still. I still constantly feel like I need to prove that I am or was sick enough to be here.
So do you feel like a regular dose of imposter syndrome?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes, sometimes I think the thing that's gotten me out of it the most is conversations like this, or like relating to people. But especially when I'm doing it on my own, or was trying to do it on my own, I felt like a fake, like almost the entire time, because I just felt like, especially as more time went on, I thought it just meant that I could be sober even longer. But I think the more I did it alone, the less time I had left to stay sober, for me personally. Because I felt that imposter syndrome, and I felt that fear of like, if my story really is just that I got sober at 17, am I ever gonna be considered like a real one, and of course I would be, but it was scary. I wanted to fit in somewhere, like I talked about with community. I wanted to feel like I actually belonged, and I didn't feel that way because of my age.
Sure. No, I get that. I do. I understand that. When I got diagnosed with chronic substance abuse disorder, the very first thing that they had me do was start doing intense outpatient therapy. And I
IOP.
went... Yeah, IOP. Yeah. So I went to IOP, and I was by far the mildest case in my group of about 14 people. By
It
far.
hurts, doesn't it?
It's so disorienting because at the time, all I can think is my life feels as if everything is like the wheels are just fucking falling off. My sense of identity in myself has now been the worst it's ever been. I cannot think of a time that was more hurtful than hearing myself say to my wife in a blubbering mess, I'm an alcoholic and I don't think I can do this anymore. That was a ego death moment that I never thought that I would ever have to have. Like, if you told me I was going to have that moment in my 20s, I would have been absolutely bewildered that that could ever even be remotely a possibility. I never saw myself as becoming an alcoholic. And yet now, on the other side of it, learning the things that I've learned, adjusting my philosophy the way that I have, all I can do is look back on that time and say, you know what? My alcoholism, in comparison to everybody else in that room, was on the mild end of it. But it doesn't matter, because to me, that realization that I was an alcoholic was absolutely everything in terms of almost all of the awful shit that I had been doing to people that I loved and cared about. It encapsulated all of it. And saying that I'm an alcoholic, the utility of that statement, knowing that it's true down to my core, has allowed me to grow and in ways that I never thought that I could. And the last 3.5 years of my life since I came out as an alcoholic have been the absolute best years of my life ever. And so weird that I had to get to a place that was so far down before I could see to the other side that there was hope, that there was life worth living, that I wasn't done at the age of 38, that I still had vital things about me that I wanted to express and become, that the statement that I used to make, I used to do a little bit of stand-up comedy, and one of my favorite bits was about how I was 37 and I was basically, nobody said that I had potential anymore. I'd gotten there. That was wherever I was, that's where. Then I got sober and I was like, no, fuck that. I have a ton of potential. I have so much more living to do. I am not done living. Absolutely not. And, you tell me that you're 19. You say that there's, more room for you to, go the, kind of the darker path. There's also so much room for you to move yourself into a place where in 10 years you can look back and say, the last 10 years of my life have been pretty fucking amazing. And I would not have been able to do that if I had let that voice in my head that said, I'm an imposter, I'm not actually an alcoholic. If you would let that voice be in control instead of saying, no, this is the point where I admit to myself wholly, heartily, and with full courage that I am an addict. I can't do it alone. I need specific tools. I need specific community. I need specific help. And with that, I can move forward and be the type of person that I might not even know that I want to be when I make the decision to come out as an alcoholic.
There's so much truth in that, you know, and that's what I'm really chasing, you know, this time. I'm not chasing time for the sake of time, you know, so that I can, you know, feel like, oh, I went this long, you know, so I can, you know, I can try again. Like, I'm chasing it because I've made that. I chose to really just finally, and I've admitted it before, but like really admit I have a fucking problem, you know. It is a problem. I am powerless, you know. and it's my truth. You know, and with what you were saying too about being like the most mild case or whatever, you know, can I ask, did you feel like your most, you know, was there any part of you when you were feeling that way that felt like the most intense not accomplishment, but the most intense thing you followed through on with alcoholism wasn't a large enough drinking career, wasn't a large enough pattern? Because I know for me, I felt like, man, that's like the most I've ever been able to commit to something, and it's not enough, you know?
I mean, so as far as longevity, yes, I drank for a long time. As far as being able to quit and make it stick, yes, I tried a couple of different times without ever admitting that I was an alcoholic to quit.
Right.
And it never stuck. I always went back. It really did take that moment of, you know, unbelievable hurt and truth to get myself to finally have the head and heart connection that I needed to be able to see that I was an addict. I don't think that it's in any way, shape, or form helpful to compare your journey in alcoholism and in recovery to anybody else's, because the only person that's affected by your alcoholism and recovery at the end of the day is you. Now, there's downstream effects from how we behave, but the behavior that's changed is in us, right?
Right.
So I tend to stick to the idea that we all tend our own gardens. And that doesn't mean that we don't have enough manure for other people's gardens. But our number one priority has to be an understanding of who and what we are and how and why we're going to stay sober.
Absolutely. You know, something I'm learning too is our stories could, you know, some of us have like very similar stories, some of us have like pretty radically different stories, but the feelings behind the moments in those stories is what we all have in common. I mean, we've all felt the same feelings, at least in some degree, you know, through our addictions. And that's what, if you're going to compare anything, well, it's not even comparing. It's just acknowledgement of each other's feelings, finding the similarities there.
Hmm.
That's, I think that's the best way to go about it, because the stories at the end of the day, you know, they mean something. Obviously, I mean, it's your story, but they're not what bonds us. What bonds us is our feelings behind those
Hmm.
stories.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that.
So I think that's what I'm trying to also really take away this time is, okay, I felt that way. I felt exactly that way. Not necessarily the context of the feeling, but I felt that.
Yep.
Um, and that's helped a lot so far, I think.
Hmm.
Um, and it's so easy. It's so easy for not even just an alcoholic, but for a lot of people to overthink a situation, to get in your head, especially if you have anxiety or depression or, mental illness, which I do. That's
I
another
mean,
part of ours in those.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
I I think that most people that suffer from addiction have a laundry list of things that
Absolutely.
are that feed right into it. I mean, I had terrible depression. That was my primary, sort of path towards uh, what made me an alcoholic. Um,
Hmm.
I had something. We moved on a little bit. So the imposter syndrome thing, just really, really quickly. My
Oh
favorite
yeah, yeah.
description, my favorite description of any kind of addiction is the um, engagement with activities that have a pleasurable outcome that we know has an associated negative cost that we continue to do
Uh,
compulsively. Continue to do
yeah.
compulsively. So I don't think that has anything to do with frequency, severity. Um, we engage in it, it feels good, we know that it's bad for us, and we can't stop ourselves from doing it. I think that that's probably the best, most succinct statement on what addiction is. And anytime that somebody brings to me, do you think that I'm addicted to something? I wheel that out and I say, does any of this make sense? Does this definition make sense to you? If it does, then this might be something that you want to talk with a professional healthcare provider and see if it's
Right.
something that they agree with too. Because the first part of it, like self-diagnosis is one thing. I think it's uh, one step on a path towards further diagnosis. I didn't need the physician to tell me that I was an addict. I was
Right.
pretty sure, but getting that confirmation from somebody that was trained in it helped me to be able to find some more information and steps and more treatment options than I would have had if I had just self-identified and then been left as a babe in the wood.
Oh yeah, it's that validation. In a way, it's
Yeah, it's like okay, so I'm not crazy. I actually am suffering from
right.
this thing. Okay, great, awesome. Because now at least you have a North Star, right? You can start navigating from there.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think we all, just a big part of the using is we all have felt pretty fucking lost,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's that kind of goes back to what we were talking about with like people and stuff, but it is that connection and that feeling of just fucking okay. I'm like I am still a person, I'm
Hmm.
more than just myself driving my own self insane and never like having anything outside of that. There is a real you build, I think, through that, um you build just a better understanding of who you really like, who you actually are,
Hmm.
or who you actually have potential to be. um and it's really easy to lose that when you're in the midst of your disease. It's so it's so easy to just become completely lost.
Yeah, I would agree. I would totally agree.
I don't know. There's so much to it, you know. It's a really in a weird way, it's a really fascinating disease. But
I
it's
don't think in a weird way. I think that we can take a look at it from, you know, an abstract point of view and understand this is fascinating. It's also, you know, deeply personal and also, you know, highly damaging, but it is fascinating.
Right.
Yes, absolutely. I think we can hold the two thoughts at the same time. I think we're, you know, bright enough to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I would agree. um so, you know, I also think like moving forward, just with trying to get my life together, the a big thing for me, I think that's going to be important is looking at my disease a little differently. Um, because, and I don't know if this is necessarily like something that you'd relate to or like that's more universal or if it's just something I'm thinking, but
Hmm.
I would bet that you probably relate to this. And, you know, a lot of people would is that, um, I think the more that I just think of my using as the substance, the more dangerous it gets. And what I mean by that is like something that's really stuck with me. Someone told me this like shit, like maybe like a year and a half ago or something.
Hmm.
They're like, I don't, you know, I think that drinking or using was your attempt at a solution, but you have a thinking problem.
Mm, sure.
And
Yeah.
I was like, I mean, obviously there's more to it than that. You know, it's of course it's a drinking problem, it's a using problem,
Well,
but it always
I'll,
stems from my thinking, you know?
I can give you a perfect example of this. Like I said this earlier tonight. When I first started drinking, I drank because I wanted to fit in with other people. By the time that I was done drinking, I was drinking to fit in with myself. Now,
Yeah.
there is a disconnect between I want to fit in with myself and I'm going to drink to do it because I still didn't fit in with myself. I still was not comfortable in my own skin. So yes, I
Right.
absolutely agree with you. There was a thinking problem. I identified a problem, I misidentified the solution for that problem, and then applied that solution, which then made things more difficult instead of getting to a place where I was working through my issues, trying to do things that were going to materially benefit my health, my livelihood, my relationship with people that I cared about. Like, all of those things were things I was not doing. The one thing I was doing that I thought was the right thing to do was absolutely the wrong thing to do. And yes, I would
Right.
totally agree. That is a thinking problem. 100%. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I do think it's, you know, the thinking problem, and you find something that you think is a solution, or that you feel like it did something, you know, regardless of how bad it was. Obviously, alcohol kind of did something for us, at least in the beginning, you know.
Hmm.
Um, and you know, I ran with that shit, and I could never really recreate it how I wanted to, but I felt like I was getting there, like I was getting somewhere every time I took more or I drank more. So I'm like, okay, you know, I'm getting to my solution. And of course, maybe you'll get there for like 2 hours if you're lucky, 2 hours, you know,
Hmm.
but that doesn't last. Um, but I do feel this new fire. Like, you know what? I'm going to get to my solution, and it might go up and down with how I feel throughout the day.
Hmm.
But this sobriety in itself is, if you know, are able to become grounded with it, it's built to last because it doesn't. You're gonna have ups and downs, but it doesn't crash the same way that
No,
withdrawal does.
no, it doesn't.
Withdrawal is withdrawal, and you know, it's just you're still in your using state really because you're just constantly thinking about the next time.
Yep.
But I don't have to think while I'm sober about like the next time I'll be sober, you
No,
know?
no, you get to just be sober.
Yeah, and regardless if you're having like a better or worse day, you're still in a constant, and I think that's really amazing.
Hmm.
but also new. So, you know, there's that discomfort that we talked about, but pushing through that discomfort for me, I know is going to be just so essential and so beneficial. And I can see that a little more clearly now. But I'm trying to learn to appreciate that discomfort, even to appreciate the hard moments, because I didn't have the chance to deal with them while I was using.
Mm-hmm.
And while it's kind of hard to learn to deal with it more for the first time now, that's kind of beautiful though. Like I get to learn this whole other side of life that I just never really had.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, I get to learn how to deal with it better. Not just for like a little period that I don't even remember after, you know? That's what I'm looking for, is like, I can actually really learn and carry it with me in the future. I could never, ever carry my high with me, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I would always try and recreate it, but I can never carry it with me.
Yeah.
I hope I've made sense, by the way.
You have.
It's pretty active, but
You have. No, it's been a good conversation, man.
yeah, I mean, I'm very glad that I've gotten the chance to even do something like this and talk to you. And this is great. It's, at least for me, it's incredibly beneficial, and there's no chance in hell that I could have carried out a conversation like this if I was fucked up right now. You know?
Yeah, no, this
Not
would
even
have been a difficult one. There's a lot of abstract, you know, concept that goes into these kinds of conversations, and I
Yeah.
really enjoy them. I don't think that we could have gotten through. This is a fascinating disease, while also holding this is also a fucked up disease at the same time. That would have been much more difficult if either one of us was loaded. So this has been a very good conversation. I'm really I'm proud of you for coming online and being, you know, so open and candid, basically to a stranger. That's pretty fucking awesome. Like, stranger danger at AA meetings is one thing. That's a closed circuit. Here, you're still basically anonymous. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I've never seen your face. I don't know your real name. So the likelihood of any kind of blowback from that is probably pretty limited. But it still takes a certain amount of courage to be able to, in a forum that might feel a little bit unfamiliar with somebody that is kind of unfamiliar, to be able to hop in and basically bare your soul. We talk about unbelievably vulnerable places of our lives, and we do it from an understanding that it is a strength that we can do that. And I think that's pretty powerful, and I think that's pretty awesome, and I think that it's pretty awesome that you at the age of 19 are willing to do that. I think that's pretty fucking brave of you, dude.
Well, I genuinely really do appreciate that, and I'm truly grateful for the chance to just be in the, I mean, even just being in the server, it's just that reminder. You know, at the very least, even if I don't talk in it at times, to look at it, and it helps, and I know that it's a thing that's there, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's quiet, it's not super active, we don't have a lot of people, you know. The community is slowly growing, as I kind of knew that this community would. You know, we're not super gamers. We have a lot of fun with the games that we play, but you know, we've got one or two people that are good at games, and everybody else is just kind of goofy and loves playing. And we have a couple of people that are in some kind of active recovery, and that side of trying to attract people is difficult. But because, one, I think this is a non-traditional niche setting for it, but two, those people that aren't in recovery, that are in these spaces, I don't think that they're ready to come out and say, hey, you know, I need help, and this
Right.
is a comfortable place for me to kind of do that because it's the sort of waters that they might swim in. We've had one person just recently that came in asking for help, and you know, we do what we can for them. So yeah. I'm glad you're here. I'm very, very glad you're here. I think it's great to have another person to talk with and to be a member of the community and bounce ideas off of and have their ideas thrown our way. You know, yeah, things are quiet on the Discord server, but we're never more than a message away for the most part.
Well, I'm really grateful to be here. And, you know, even with the quiet, though, it's like, it's so obvious, I think, that everyone in this community gives a shit. Like, truly gives a shit, too. I mean, I saw that the moment I joined. The moment I asked for, like, a response, you know, the responses were, they felt truly empathetic. None of it felt like bullshit, you know, and I
Mhm.
think that's a little harder to get when it grows so much. So I think there's a real beauty to where it's at right now as well.
Yeah, I think so too. Don't get me wrong. I'd like it to grow. I'd like to be able to help more people,
course.
but you know, I have to look at what we've got and be incredibly thankful that anybody was willing to take a chance on, you know, showing up on stream or joining the Discord or listen to the podcast or, you know, however, you know, this space is utilized. I just have to be grateful for that, in general. So yeah, man. Cheers.
Well,
The Discord's always open. Anytime we're streaming, you're always free to just pop in and say, hey. Don't have to ask permission. You literally can just pop in. We'll pause whatever game we're playing, and you know, the share is the important thing here. The gaming is just something fun to do while we wait.
well, I really appreciate the opportunity, and I really, really look forward to seeing just the progression of this community and how it grows. So I'm very grateful to be here. Thanks again for having this chat with me, Will. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely my pleasure, man. Absolutely my pleasure. I get as much out of this as you do.
That's great. That's awesome.
Seriously. That's 100. Every single. I've had conversations 4 nights out of this week that have absolutely reaffirmed everything that I'm doing here. That's
awesome.
so central to me staying sober and staying, staying sober. That I didn't have any problems with cravings this week because I talked to people every day about stuff that was going on in our lives, in our communities, and I fucking love it. I fucking love it.
God, that's fucking amazing, and it's inspiring for me to hear too. So, well, man, thanks again so much for the talk, and
You're welcome.
I'm glad I could pop in for real.
Yeah, me too, man. Yeah, I'm glad you said fuck it, let's go. I like it.
Yeah, that's kind of where I had to go. I'm like, yeah, let's just do it.
That's awesome. That's
All
awesome.
right,
All right,
well,
man.
I'll see you around. Well, thanks again.
Yeah, go get some rest, okay? We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. All right, take care.
Yep, you too. All right, everybody. That's going to be it for tonight's episode of Save versus Poison. Can't thank all of you enough. Cannot thank you nearly enough for showing up, for being a part of the community, for reinforcing everything that we're doing together to grow and be in our recovery in meaningful, mindful ways. I will forever be grateful to everybody that shows up. Seriously. We'll see everybody back here on Friday night. It'll be Hunt Night, which means pew pew in the bayou. We'll have a topic of conversation right around 8 o'clock, and then we'll get into the bayou as soon as we're done with that. And then, it's going to be a good time. We're going to have a great time. You guys all take care of yourselves. I wish you nothing but the warmest, creamiest of regards. Good night, everybody. Homework does suck.